We are back for another edition of the Awesemo MMA Strategy Show to get you ready for Saturday's UFC Vegas number 34. Of course, going down inside the UFC Apex, headlined by a middleweight matchup between Jared Cannonier and Kevin Gastelum. Also, the co-main event will be in the lightweight division, as you got Mark O. Madsen taking on Clay Guida. If you've not seen the interview that Mark Madsen gave to the media this week about just the crazy what his life has been like over the past 17 months. Well, I'll mention some of those quotes from that. But of course, we are sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight. We'll tell you a little bit about Monkey Knife Fight here later on in the show. Talk about some plays over there. There was one line that really stuck out to me. I was actually surprised to see how high the total strikes landed were in that one. But also, we are brought to you by our brand new podcast here at Awesemo, Betting You Who Will Win the Heisman. Can Georgia dethrone Alabama? Which MAC team should you be putting your money on? These questions and so much more answered every Wednesday with Matt Jajeski and Ben Ross as they talk all things college football betting. We have new episodes available now on nearly every podcasting platform. So wherever you like to get your podcast, be sure to check out that. Whether you're like myself, I'm an Apple Podcast guy. Or maybe if you want to go over to Spotify, you can check out that over there as college football season is here. I believe it's week 0 is actually next week. And then Labor Day weekend, we'll get everything kicked off there. So we got you covered here for college football coverage here at Awesemo.com. But for the next hour, we are here to talk UFC Vegas number 34. And as always, I'm joined by the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. Of course, you follow Pete on Twitter at Pete the Heat MMA. You can see him, over there on his Twitch streams playing a little Call of Duty. So happy Thursday afternoon, Pete.
What's up, buddy? How are you? Happy to be back and happy to have a fight-filled weekend between all the promotions, PFL, Bellator, and of course UFC. Not the best card, but I'm always excited for a UFC card.
Man, with also that Bellator card, we lost the fight that was one of my top 4 fights of the week of J.J. Wilson, Adam Borex. J.J. Wilson misses weight badly, missed weight by 4 pounds. So that fight is off the fight card. That was a fight that really looking forward to. Tonight on the PFL card, I will tell you, Jamel Jones, the heavyweight, is someone that does intrigue me. Kayla Harrison, I think she's must-watch TV. You can't bet that line.
She's like minus 4,500, isn't she? It's something crazy.
I did my show on Tuesday afternoon. She was like minus 2,000.
Yeah, I think she's got bumped up quite a bit. I mean, she's a fantastic talent. Outside of a parlay piece, it's damn near impossible. And even then, if the bookie or the platform that you're placing bets on has prop bets, that's probably the way to go in that matchup.
Yeah, Larissa Pacheco misses weight. She's off the card. Missing weight just cost her a chance at 2 wins away from $1 million, Pete.
What did he? Oh, man, the weight cutting struggles. And you and I know that we have a mutual friend who is big on anti-cutting weight. And, you wonder if the day's ever going to come where there's a huge change in the sport. But man, it's crazy how many opportunities are kind of thrown to the side because of mismanagement of weight.
Yeah. And when you say big, that is all caps, B-I-G. Yeah. In terms of that person's thought there. Of course, if you do have any questions on the fights, we're going to break this one, every fight down here over the next hour. Be sure to leave those there over in the YouTube chats. Of course, it's been about 2 weeks since we've been here. Jessica Penne, man, making me look smart a couple weeks ago.
Bro, that was an awesome underdog call, and props to you. We always say about how jiu-jitsu fighters may not have the best takedowns, but she went in there and immediately implemented her game. And, what can you say? The submission was great, and you needed her in order to cash big in these big GPPs.
Yeah, I mean, and as I look at Saturday's UFC card, I do think this is potentially a spot where we could see multiple underdogs come in here in terms of some of these matchups. We'll talk about it as we do go on. Of course, appreciate it if you can give us a thumbs up here. If you're watching us live on YouTube, be sure to hit that notification bell, subscribe, all of that. Of course, today's free premium data and tools over at Awesemo.com are the MLB top stacks. That's a tool when I do get a chance to play MLB, usually I try to, I don't like to make my MLB lines earlier in the day. So it's usually when I'm around the computer later in the afternoon, but you got to check out that free premium data and tools we have over at Awesemo.com, MLB top stacks. And if you are an Awesemo Plus member, ownership for Saturday's UFC is already up on the site. Alex got that up here about 40 minutes ago, so you can check that out over there. But Pete, let's get right into this main event. Jared Cannonier, Kevin Gastelum. Cannonier 8,700, 7,500 for Kevin Gastelum. Watching these two guys talk to the media yesterday, the one thing that, from the biggest takeaway I had from Jared Cannonier was talking about the surgeries that he had, went through 2 surgeries. And, he said, look, I wasn't rushing it back. He goes, I didn't want to re-aggravate this thing. And then you look at Kevin Gastelum. I thought it was really interesting. He talked about the impact that Henry Cejudo has been on him in terms of his training camp. Also talked about how it's been a more structured training camp for this one. But I mean, like, for me, as I look at it from a DFS angle, Pete, like if you're a Jared Cannonier backer, you love this fight for Jared Cannonier if he can, get that stoppage in the first, second round. Kevin Gastelum never been stopped by TKO first off that in knockout. So you got to throw that one out there. But I do feel like when we're talking about fighters to put in your underdog pool, Kevin Gastelum, I think, is somebody we got to consider, because I think if this fight hits the 4th and 5th round, I like Kelvin more and more. Yeah,
I really like this matchup. It's an interesting, clash of styles, and especially given the circumstances for both of these guys. Kelvin Gastelum's 1-4 in his past 5, which is pretty crazy. He had that awesome victory over Ian Heinisch, and then, in my opinion, was booked against Robert Whittaker a little too soon, because there's levels to this game, and Robert Whittaker is, at the top. And, I will say that momentum was kind of halted with that matchup. And if you go back to the Ian Heinisch fight, you saw him implement some strong takedowns. And I think that could be the difference maker here. And, his toughness is, next level. He hasn't been knocked out, but he has been rocked and dropped numerous times, especially in the Israel Adesanya fight. So there's a lot of damage on his body for sure. And that doesn't mean that Cannonier can't go out there and knock him out, because Cannonier hits like a truck, and, he's fought at numerous weight classes and looks like a problem at this weight class. But for me, I really do like Kelvin Gastelum because of the experience, especially if you look at his strength of schedule. The opposition has been damn near elite throughout his entire career. And yes, he has struggled, and he has kind of like alternated wins and losses for a little bit, and then went on a really, really long losing streak. I just like the potential and the better overall fighter. And you will hear me say that a lot today, where there's a ton of close fights on this card. And I think that it's going to be a very tricky card for DFS. But for betting, it's almost like what moves the needle for me is who's the more well-rounded martial artist. And for me, it's Kelvin Gastelum. Like, I feel like he can strike just as good as Jared Cannonier. He can hurt him with some good blitzes. He has an excellent uppercut. And he has good combinations. And then if he needs to solidify some rounds, he needs to go out there and take him down. And obviously, if he's been working with Henry Cejudo, massive weight difference between the two. But if you can bring in his style into your game, you'll obviously know that he's talking and working on his wrestling. That's exactly what he's referring to. So I think that he could, patch some holes and refine his work to really go out there and put a stamp on this fight against Jared Cannonier. I like Kelvin in the fight.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of just as a fighter to put in your underdog pool, Kelvin Gastelum is somebody you put in there, but maybe Jared Cannonier can be that first guy. I mean, like, look, to me, Cannonier is someone to look at. I will tell you, Kevin Gastelum be a decision prop. I want to say was, I don't know, maybe like plus 250. I'll have to double check to see what that was, but I know that was one of the props I was kind of looking at, because there wasn't a ton of props that, as of right now, really stuck out to me. But I think if Kevin Gastelum wins, I do think it's by decision. But I think the longer this fight goes, the more I like Kelvin in the spot.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I don't think that Jared Cannonier is a bad play at all. I just think, he's a little expensive, and I understand it's the 5 rounds, but you can pretty much not guarantee, but like, I think the KO is off the table. So that those high point bonuses are off the table for Cannonier. He's going to have to make that up with volume and, defending some takedowns. And I think that there's no way he's going to go out there and wipe the floor 5 rounds to none against Kelvin Gastelum. So can he do enough in 3 rounds to really pay off at 8,700? It's a little tough for me, whereas Kelvin Gastelum, being a grappler, can really make up that ground a lot easier. I mean, he scored 6 takedowns against Ian Heinisch. I'm not expecting that, but I'm thinking of a well-rounded performance. Something that's interesting to me is early on in Gastelum's career, especially on The Ultimate Fighter, he started to, and following The Ultimate Fighter, he started to find a lot of rear naked chokes. And I know that his jiu-jitsu is somewhat lacking, but that's just something that's kind of like, oh, it got my attention a little bit. Maybe if Cannonier gets fatigued later on, that's something that he could take advantage of.
Dave over in the chat. Dave, I know what Pete's answer is going to be to this one. He goes, Pete, I feel bad for taking everyone's money on DraftKings due to your great insight. You mind if I send you a cut? It would make me feel better. I'm just going to say Pete's going to say yes. I'm just going to say.
No. All I got to say is, there's a lot of effort on both of our behalves, and it's the team effort from Tyler to Jason to me and other people at Awesemo. We appreciate you. Just share our work, hit that thumbs up, and tweet out your screenshots on DraftKings on Twitter.
Now, the co-main event of this fight card will be a matchup at 155 pounds. We got Clay Guida taking on Marco Madsen. First fight for Marco Madsen in just under 2 years, 17 months away for him. You'll get the price point here. He's $9,100 on DraftKings, $20 over on FanDuel. And then for Clay Guida, he's $7,100 on DraftKings, $11 over on FanDuel. And when you listen to Marco Madsen talk about what has happened since his last fight, so he suffers a broken jaw in his last fight. Yep. Has surgery, complications from the surgery. So then he has to have a second surgery. Then he comes down with COVID. Then following that, his wife was diagnosed with MS. And now he is training at Fight Ready there in Arizona, where I thought the interesting thing that he said was, he said, found a good place to develop. And, and look, everyone knows about his wrestling credentials, Olympic silver medalist. And Clay Guida said this: reason I like this matchup so much is because we are not wrestling the Olympic silver medalist Marco Madsen. We are simply fighting the inexperienced mixed martial artist.
It's a great way to put it. It's a great way to put it. But I mean, that's really optimistic, right? Like, you have to imagine that over the course of him starting his MMA career, that he's evolving and turning into an MMA fighter. But what he's saying is true. You can't match the experience in MMA to Clay Guida. I mean, that's why Clay Guida is a legend within the sport, so to speak, because he's been around so long and competing at such a decently high level that he has the right to say that. And an experienced fighter like Clay Guida will probably look to take advantage of a fatigued Marco Madsen as the fight progresses, because that's a hole in his in his game, if you wanted to point fingers at anything. But I will say that Marco Madsen is going to be the stronger wrestler, and if he can get top position over Clay Guida, I think that he can pose him a ton of problems and definitely win this fight via decision, as long as he doesn't end up overexerting and fatiguing himself too much. I understand that there will be some popularity with Clay Guida given the price and the liability within Madsen's cardio. So 7,100, you have to think about how Clay Guida is going to score, right? So he predominantly scores via takedowns. You're probably going to, cross off a lot of takedowns whenever you're facing Marco Madsen. I would just assume. So his path to victory will probably be trying to sneak out a decision or possibly get a TKO or a submission. In my opinion, I think that's really unlikely in this fight, but I understand if you want to target it. Clay Guida does have 17 losses, but has faced literally everybody within the division. So you could do worse, but I like Mark Madsen, 9,100. I think he's going to be able to do enough to, perform at that salary.
I mentioned there was not a lot of props that stuck out to me. There was a prop in this fight that stuck out to me. Mark Madsen via submission. Plus 550, because Clay Guida does leave his neck out there. Now, the other side of that, and you mentioned about the cardio potential concerns to have there with Madsen is, I mean, Clay's going to keep coming. He's a cardio machine. And so I think the way you present that is, I think if you tell me this fight ends early, I think it's Mark Madsen getting the win. But if I'm a Mark Madsen backer, what does concern me is if say this fight makes it out of the second round, what does that cardio sound like? What does the cardio look like in terms of Marco Madsen? Or is it a situation where the team there at Fight Ready and led by Santino have corrected that issue?
I think it could be just a situation of like Clay Guida is going to be there in game throughout the entire fight, but it could be a matter of too little, too late. Clay Guida started to come on late, but he ran out of time. well, guess what? Mark Madsen will still possibly walk away as, the winner in this matchup, just given his style. And he's not going to be able to go in there and impose his will in the takedown department. And I think that's really where he shines in a lot of fights, where he's the difference maker. He's getting outstruck. He'll resort to takedowns. I don't see that happening against Marco Madsen. I could be wrong. And I don't hate having exposure to Clay Guida. There are just some other fighters on the card that I feel like have more of a legitimate chance at, pulling the upset.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice price tag there on Clay Guida, and you certainly have to pay up if you want to get to Mark Madsen. Of course, fantasy football season is right around the corner, and our fantasy football draft kick is now available for season-long and best ball fantasy leagues. The same projections, tools, and analysis that we use for NFL DFS goes into this package, which includes our draft wingman, best ball rankings and stacking guide, trade value chart, and so much more. You can also receive up to $35 credit for underdog and FFPC leagues. You can get this package for 33% off when you use the promo code WR at checkout. That's promo code WR at checkout. That's less than $10 for everything we have to offer for season long and best ball. Just click the link in the description of the video to activate this offer. I will tell you, I used that draft wingman last year, and it treated me really well. Really helped out a lot. I can tell you, I know everything there is to know about the NFC South, because that is where I have to worry about the most. That draft wingman was a great tool for me. So highly recommend checking that out and take advantage of that promo we got going on for our kit there. Next up, we got a heavyweight matchup. Parker Porter taking on Chase Sherman. Parker Porter, 7,000. Chase Sherman, 9,200 over on FanDuel. $23 for Chase Sherman, $8 for Parker Porter. Obviously you're familiar with Parker Porter being there in the Northeast. He's a big boy. He's a big boy. And Chase Sherman, we've seen him since coming back to the UFC. This is one of those ones where I just feel like if you tell me this fight makes it to the third round, I like Parker Porter more and more. But if you tell me this fight's over within the first 5 to 7 minutes, I like Chase Sherman.
Yeah, it's a great point, Jason. And I will say that, how I was talking and alluding to the fact that there are some underdogs on this slate that I like a little bit more than Clay Guida. Parker Porter's one of them. It's not that I'm so confident in his skill set for this matchup. It's just that he does have a path to victory. Obviously, Chase Sherman is going to be extremely dangerous in round one. And that early KO bonus is definitely, in the running. So I'm going to have plenty of exposure to Chase Sherman. But as far as underdogs on the slate, Parker Porter makes up for power with volume. He has excellent volume as a heavyweight. And in addition to that, he has decent cardio and good toughness. So I actually could see him, weathering the storm early and starting to, kind of outpoint Chase Sherman as the fight progresses and walking away with a decision victory. So I want exposure at 7,000. I really do. This is a guy that I will be plugging into my underdog pool over on Awesemo.com, Fantasy Cruncher, utilizing some groups. I want exposure to Parker Porter. This is heavyweight MMA, and it's very volatile sometimes. I do think that Chase Sherman being at Sanford MMA is an interesting wrinkle for this matchup, though, because he's surrounded by top talent, good strikers, good wrestlers. He's going to come in there pretty prepared. I just don't know. I don't have a good read on Chase Sherman when he's, I guess, not popping. And it's weird because his career has been somewhat inconsistent. And it's like, oh, wow, he really looked good in that Ike Villanueva fight. But what was that, attributed to? Was it more of a skill set, or was that more of, the USADA violation? I'm not quite sure. I want exposure to both sides in this fight. And, I made the case for both of them. I'm still going to lean towards Chase Sherman pulling off the victory, but obviously my hometown boy, I'm going to be rooting for Parker Porter like crazy.
I mean, look, there is a reason why Chase Sherman is the favorite in this one. And I think that, yes, I would prefer to pick him as the winner in this one. It's a high price tag over on FanDuel at $23. Sure. At that price tag at $23, I think you're essentially just, the hope has got to be that he goes out there and gets a first round finish and can finish it pretty quickly here. But, one thing about Parker Porter, I think he is durable. We've seen him taking some big shots, and it takes a lot to put him out. So I think that's just something to kind of think about. But look, it's heavyweight MMA. I will say this fight going to decision, I don't think that is I could see that being the case.
Yeah, it's interesting because, Parker Porter has taken a lot of shots in his career. He's usually in tons of slugfests, and he's in a regional scene, he's able to withstand those shots and persevere through it and deal with adversity just fine. But we have seen him, wobbled numerous times in the UFC in his early tenure already. So I think that Chase Sherman's extremely talented. I on paper, it looks like Sherman should really just go in there and get rid of Porter with ease based on the history and strength of schedule. But I feel like this fight's going to be a lot closer than people imagine.
Yeah, I'm with you in terms of that one. Let's move on to the next matchup, and we have got Trevin Jones taking on Said Yukub. Said's a guy I've actually interviewed him it was probably at some point, beginning of this year, maybe late last year. A fighter that has, gone through the regional scene, recently made the switch out to Team Oyama out there in California training. He's from the Chicago area. And, you feel bad for Trevin Jones. I mean, Pete, you can talk about this as a fighter. I mean, all you got to do is go his Tapology. He was initially supposed to take on Tony Kelly on July 24th. That fight gets canceled. Then he's supposed to take on Ronnie Lawrence on July 31st. That fight gets canceled. Then he was supposed to take on Mano Martinez, who he making his UFC debut. That fight gets canceled. And I was listening to him talk earlier. He's just like, look, just send me a name.
Yeah, I mean, at one point, it doesn't even matter who the opponent is, as long as you're training for like the champion, where your opponent's going to be good in all areas. That's kind of how I start my training camps off, because there's so many changes and so many people fall out from injuries to weight issues, where you just want to be prepared for the best fighter in all areas. And then as the fight gets closer, that's when you really start to hone in with your coaches. But I will say, a guy like Trevin Jones, I don't think he cares. I mean, he's a smart guy, where he went out to Vegas, right? And he put himself into a great opportunity. And, that decision has really changed his life. I mean, he was losing against Timur Valiev and then came from behind and had one hell of a comeback, if not one of the best comebacks of all time. And then against Mario Batista, just, his output is somewhat lackadaisical, but when he does connect in the UFC, he's been putting guys out, man. And that's something outside the UFC that was not really there. So I wonder, a guy like where Tanner Boser, right? Tanner Boser outside the UFC was a decision machine, came into the UFC and found some nice finishes. So you wonder if it's going to get back to the norm, or if Trevin Jones, with his confidence and momentum, is just going to keep soaring. I will say that, any fighter stepping in on a couple days notice typically will struggle if they're not coming off of a fight where it's like, okay, they fall a couple weeks before. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult to cut weight on short notice. And in addition to that, perform at an optimal level. This is a very, very winnable fight for Said Yukub, especially because Trevin Jones, I don't know. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And I feel like he's a little bit of both. And he's definitely taken advantage of his opportunity. But I think he should be 0-2 in the UFC right now. But credit to him, he pulled it off. With all that being said, though, I still like Trevin Jones, man. I don't really like a fighter stepping up on just a couple of days' notice to come in here and do what Mario Batista and Timur Valiev were unable to do, which is a little bit of MMA math, but that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you question about is, I think, first off, the weight cut of, when he took this fight earlier this week, how much weight is he going to have to cut? What's it been like in the gym for him there at Team Oyama? He doesn't live in California. Mm-hmm. He comes in to train there at Team Oyama. So that's part of the equation to think about in terms of, I mean, you look at Trevin Jones, and for those who are not aware of the story, what he did was, he is originally from the United States, but was living in Guam, and he came to Vegas, and he just basically bet on himself, saying, you know what? All these fighters are falling out of UFC fights. I need to be in Las Vegas to potentially get one of these fights. He gets it, goes in there. The first round against Timur Valiev, it probably couldn't go any worse than what it did. You could make the argument that the fight should have been stopped. It's not stopped, and then he comes back, a great come from behind victory there. And Mario Batista got off to a good start of that one. Then he ends up getting the stoppage there early on in the second round here. I don't mind putting Said in it, but I do think that I'm kind of concerned, the longer the fight goes, and when you're talking about taking a fight there on short notice, Trevin Jones, I mean, it's a high price tag, whether we're talking about DraftKings or FanDuel. $8,800 on DraftKings, $18 over on FanDuel.
it is as it is a high price tag, but I will say that Trevin Jones, in the UFC, his KO ability is crazy, and we have seen a Sayed Yokob get rocked and knocked out in the past, especially for having such a young career. That is a lot of damage to take already, and I understand that Trevin Jones, 13-6 overall, he's starting to find himself though, honestly, and he's not a terrible grappler. He's a decent wrestler, decent with jiu-jitsu, holds a pretty high ranking. I believe he's either brown belt or black belt, but some of that within MMA is a little blurred, where some people with high rankings aren't necessarily as talented in those departments as they should be. Sayed could definitely pose problems in the wrestling aspect of this fight. If he goes out there with a strict grappling and wrestling approach, he could definitely win over Trevin Jones. 7,400 because of the wrestling threat. I'm putting him in my underdog pool, but I'm limiting his exposure level. I don't really foresee him beating Trevin Jones, on a couple days notice. So I like Trevin Jones from a KO standpoint. 8,800, I think it's a deal, and I'm okay with getting exposure to it. And hopefully Trevin Jones can keep this momentum going.
By the way, reach him over there in our YouTube chat. Appreciate you checking in here on a Thursday afternoon. And of course, as we're talking UFC Vegas number 34, let's move on to the next matchup. We got a matchup of now two guys who are both from training in the state of Colorado, Vince Pichel and Austin Hubbard. Vince Pichel, he's been in the UFC for 9 years, only has 8 fights.
That's crazy.
8,200, 8,000 fight here. Pichel's the 8,200. Vince Pichel now training at Factory X Muay Thai there in Denver. He decided to make the move from California to Colorado. He said when he moved, he went to rent the U-Haul. U-Haul cost him $4,000 to rent. You think U-Haul realizes a lot of people are leaving the state of California?
Wow, that's ridiculous. Geez, that's crazy. We got our 8,200, 8,000 fight, Jason, and you guys know that I absolutely suck at this price range, but I feel like I'm not too worried this week. I think that Vince Pichel is going to go in there and get it done. I think that despite his, inactivity within the UFC octagon, I think that he's pretty well-rounded. And I think that he can pose Austin Hubbard some problems, despite Hubbard looking okay, I guess, against Dakota Bush. I like Vince Pichel in this matchup. Do you?
I do as well. One of the things that I found extremely interesting, and this is not the first time I heard a fighter say this. He talked about since he moved out to Factory X training there, first time he's lifted weights as a pro mixed martial artist.
Yeah. Me and my coach Greg were actually talking about that, and everybody has different opinions with it. I think that, lifting will definitely help your wrestling and takedowns and, takedown defense. So, if you're lifting weights for your lower body, I feel like it's awesome, especially for your hips. But upper body, a striker and an old striking coach will say you don't want to get stiff. You don't want to get tight. You want to be nice and loose as a striker. You don't want to fatigue your shoulders too early in a fight. So it's interesting. I feel like if you do it correctly, like everybody at the PI is doing, if you have, all this technology right now that's in MMA, it's fantastic. It's amazing to see. And I can't wait to see like the next 10 or 20 years to see people with, a lifelong amount of martial arts training in addition to a science. You know what I mean? Like we were kind of in like, back in the day where it's just like everybody just goes in there and just fights. But, now we're starting to see this new wave of mixed martial arts, and I like it. And I think I like the weightlifting for Vince Pichel. He looks like a very strong guy. I think he's going to have somewhat of a difficult time holding Hubbard down. Hubbard, has a good get up game, but he does lack some takedown defense. So I do like Vince Pichel in the matchup.
Well, I mean, just think about just from your personal experiences, how different training is now as opposed to 5 years ago. And especially from the UFC aspect of the fact of how many of these fighters are now taking advantage of the PI and figuring out, what is the optimal way to get peak performance out of their body. The fact of, I mean, look, we're seeing so many fighters move to Las Vegas because they want to take advantage of the PI. They want to take advantage of all the tools there. And the fact that they can put them on a meal program to make sure their weight is where it needs to be. And, some fighters, and they can cater a training schedule for what the science tells them about the fighter's body. It's crazy the stories I hear about when fighters go out to the PI for the first time, they just go through that battery of testing, and they literally leave there with a completely different mindset on how to train.
Jason, let me tell you, I can't imagine how the PI is, but I was with Cowboy in the peak of his career, and I thought I knew what hard training was when he was focused. That we were going from practice to practice to practice, and we had strength and conditioning and swimming and this and that. It was insane. So when you start to bring in the correct and right professionals in your career, especially like when you're making money and you can afford to do that, like when you're on the low level UFC, it's hard, man. It's hard to make a living, never mind pay all these coaches and bring all these experts in. But when you're, fighting for a title or something like that, that's when things change. And that's where you really start to see fighters' potential. But needless to say, I like Vince Pichel in the matchup. And I do think that the move to the new camp is a good one for him.
And we'll see how that one goes down. Of course, this is the Awesemo MMA Strategy Show. We are sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight. With Monkey Knife Fight, you are in charge. Of course, when you use that promo code Awesemo, get an instant first match deposit of up to $100. You got to use that promo code Awesemo when you sign up. And I want to talk a little bit about the main event, co-main event here in terms of total strikes here. Kevin Gastelum, Jared Cannonier. I thought this one was kind of interesting. And I think it kind of dictates of how Monkey Knife Fight sees this fight happening of a Jared Cannonier win. If it does come early, with 100.5 strikes for Jared Cannonier, 69.5 for Kevin Gastelum.
Yeah, well, I'm smashing more on Kelvin, 100%. It comes down to how you see this going. And, I actually think that I'll probably say more on both because Kelvin is hittable. He's just very tough. So what he lacks in, striking defense, he makes up with toughness. So I will say more for both of them, but it's a lock play for Kelvin Gastelum with more.
And then in the co-main event, we got Clay Guida and Marco Madsen. And this is the one, just how do you expect it to go down here? Clay Guida, 68.5, Marco Madsen, 39.5.
Eesh. Well, I wonder if Clay Guida is going to abandon takedowns because he should know that the takedown defense of Marco Madsen is just going to be there unless it's more of a fatiguing strategy. I will probably say more for Marco Madsen, just slightly. I'm not expecting a lot, and less for Clay Guida.
Yeah, I think the question is if the fight does hit that third round, then I think that number on Marco Madsen becomes a more situation, but then that 68.5 for Clay Guida becomes kind of an interesting dynamic of how you see that one going there. Now, I mentioned about, look, as you look at this weekend MMA, there is not a ton of fights that truly get me jacked up. But the next one is one of those matchups I am jacked up about. Brandon Royval and Alexander Pantoja. Pantoja, 8,900, 7,300 for Brandon Royval. I love this matchup.
Can you remember? Do you remember when they were talking about getting rid of this division? What the hell were they thinking? I was screaming from everywhere saying, do not get rid of the 25 division. Like I love light weight classes. Like you guys know, I love the WEC. That's my favorite organization. And, it was all lighter weights. I felt like it was more action packed, but that's my personal opinion. The 25ers, man, they're so good everywhere. This is such a high level fight between these two, Alexandre Pantoja, Brandon Royval. Now, let me tell you, it's a very difficult task for Royval coming off a huge injury to now step in there against Alexandre Pantoja in his first fight back. I just think it's a lot, man. I really do. I like Brandon Royval. I think that he has skills everywhere. Obviously, his greatest skill is his submission grappling, but he's going to have some tough moments here against Alexandre Pantoja. For me, I really like Pantoja. I think that he's among the elite within this division. And I think that, despite Brandon Royval being extremely dangerous in numerous areas, I think that Pantoja is going to be wise to it and just be a little bit better in all areas. And he possesses that dangerous KO power. So 8,900 is a little rich for a flyweight fight. I don't expect a finish, but I do expect Pantoja to walk away victorious.
The one thing I wonder about Brandon Royval, and now, because of the injury, having that additional time is maybe will we see a fighter that doesn't take as many risks as he's done before. He kind of joked about, not throwing 4 spinning back fists in a fight again, but he's a guy that he's going to constantly be going for. I do wonder how much of the preparations for this fight was the team going, Brandon, we got to be a little more, patient with how we do these dynamic strikes.
It's hard. It's really hard. I mean, in my career, I've struggled at times with my coach, Greg, telling me I need to be a little bit more patient and selective. And, I've rushed things, and sometimes it's just like the way you are or how you are in the training room. And then, you come out and you're just a little too eager to get out there. And obviously it's probably nerves as well. But I think like it's just in Brandon Royval's nature to be aggressive. And that's awesome. If Pantoja's not in good cardio shape, Royval can definitely, steal this fight. He could definitely steal the fight if, Pantoja has a bad camp or something like that, something that we don't know. So Royval needs to be included in your underdog pool, but I'm capping his exposure. I think that Pantoja wins this probably 8 out of 10 times, in my opinion. I really do like him in this fight.
But I think when we're talking GPP and you want to throw a dart out there for someone that if this fighter is going to win, potentially could be a finish, I don't mind putting Royval in that punt play discussion.
I don't blame you either, but could you see him submitting Pantoja?
Probably not.
So we're thinking knockout?
I think it's him catching him with a combination.
That's fair. Because I thought you were going to say he was going to possibly catch Pantoja. I mean, anything can happen, right? You can flip somebody, hurt them, and then finish him with a submission.
Yeah.
Because you're not all there. That's definitely possible. So at 7,300, that's why we're saying that he needs to be a part of your underdog pool. But for me, the chances of that happening are not really high, in my opinion. I think that Pantoja just goes out there, puts a stamp on this and says, hey, where's my title shot?
Dave, I see your question about that free DraftKings pool for the main event questions. We will certainly answer those right at the end of the show. But man, looking forward to Pantoja and Royval. Next up, we have got Austin Lingo and Luis Saldana. Saldana 8,300, 7,900 for Lingo, and then $16 and $14 respectively over on FanDuel. What's your thoughts, Pete?
I think this is a trap fight. And I think it's a trap fight for either fighter where, the opponents can definitely break through. And I think this is going to be a pivotal matchup for a lot of GPP lineups. So I circled this matchup, not necessarily that I think that, a crazy score is going to come, but I think that it could be a tilting fight in regards to, Luis Saldana probably having the better overall striking, staying on his bicycle, moving around, outpointing and outworking Austin Lingo. But if Austin Lingo gets inside, gets close, he can catch you with a big shot, rock you, hurt you, possibly out wrestle Luis Saldana. When you're coming from a very, very good camp, that's something that I always worry about, where it's like, okay, I don't like targeting fighters facing somebody who's from a good camp. Mm-hmm. But I do think, like, when I'm looking at fight footage, Saldana looks like he should go out there and win. But I will tell you that, strategy and game plan, if a fighter can follow it, that's where these elite coaches really can find an avenue of success. So if Austin Lingo fights the correct fight at 7,900, you could be looking at a guy that breaks the slate, honestly. I think that Luis Saldana will walk away with a, unanimous decision. I think he's going to go out there and kind of, just not be there for Austin Lingo and then just pick him apart from the outside. So 8,300, you could do worse, but, circle this fight. I really think that it's going to be a tilting fight.
Of course, earlier in the show, you heard Pete talking about how we love to see those screenshots after the fights are over. Of course, we want to see you get into the Awesemo Hall of Fame. You got to be rocking that Awesemo avatar on your DFS profile when you place in the top 3 of a contest with over 5,000 contestants. Tweet your wins to @Awesemo HOF, and you'll win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Only one free month can be awarded to a user per calendar year. Just congratulations to a couple of people that recently went into the Awesemo Hall of Fame. Dynasty 246 win $100, taking out second place in a FanDuel PGA contest. And then P. Hanley 214, his name comes up a ton, doing tremendous over there over in MLB, winning $100,000 and $50,000 in our contest. Congratulations to you. Also, Justin Tope, congratulations. You finished in second place there in a MLB contest as well. And then Boss Hog taking down the mini max over there on DraftKings. So congratulations to everyone that has recently gone into the Awesemo Hall of Fame, and would love to see you those screenshots on Saturday. I won't be able to watch the fights live, so I'll be seeing them after the fact.
Damn. I was just looking at the screenshots. P. Hanley just murdered that entire slate. My goodness. I was like, what the hell? Every lineup was in the green, but props to you guys. We couldn't do this without you guys. We love seeing the screenshots. It's really cool to see you guys go out there and win some good cash. Man. So you said you're not watching the fights live?
No, I've got a Bucks game on Saturday night.
That's right. Yeah, I'll be I will
not be here for Live Before Lock. Greg will be filling in for me hosting the show. So P will be with Greg here on Saturday. Yeah. So Pete, I'm going to submit my lineups on Saturday afternoon. So
I got you.
If something changes, I firmly expect a text. If you don't text me, I'm just going to go, you changed.
I got you. I got you, bro. You don't have to worry. But
you know how these Vegas cards go.
And I was just going to say, this is at the Apex, and I feel like we're going to have a couple fighters miss weight. I really do. Not because it's just a typical thing for the Apex, but more so certain fighters have struggled to make weight on this card.
Wow, you said that at the right moment. Are you thinking Domingo Pilarte?
He's a big boy for the weight class, man. He is a big boy for the weight class. I kind of think that he might be one of them that could, miss weight this time, but I'm worried about Ignacio honestly missing weight, but in regards to the Brian Kelleher Domingo Pilarte fight, you're talking about two different body styles for 135 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, and also you have a 7-inch reach advantage for Pilarte in this one. I mean, if you're Brian Kelleher, it just becomes how do you get on the inside of this one and not allow Pilarte to stay on the outside?
Well, yeah. So, obviously Pilarte will be looking to keep Kelleher at bay with straight shots. And, that's going to be difficult. If you think of it from like a fencing aspect, if Pilarte stays on the outside and fences Brian Kelleher, he could have some issues getting inside. But I will tell you that he somewhat leaves himself open. His hands are extremely low throughout most of his fights, where he tries to, come from a creative style with low hands, nice and loose, and, snapping his punches. But more often than not, he's been caught with some looping shots, and that's not good news whenever you're facing Brian Kelleher, because Kelleher, you saw what he did in a couple of his fights, and he has some good power, man. Good spinning back fist, good hooks, solid jiu-jitsu as well. I just think that this Brian Kelleher, man, I don't really like Domingo Pilarte in this fight. I think that Kelleher is the side that I want to go, and I want to smash exposure to him. Obviously, I am worried about the reach, but at 9,000. I think that his experience will get him inside. It's not like he hasn't fought somebody, with a similar length and skill set of Pilarte. I think that Kelleher is going to show like, hey, I'm a name within this division, like a fringe name that can, somewhat be a gatekeeper and make my way up the ladder. And I like Kelleher a lot at 9,000. I think that he's the more well-rounded mixed martial artist, and he's going to get this done.
As I was putting together my prep this week and I was looking at GPP fights that I want to target, this was one of the fights I really looked at as a GPP play. I think we got to target either side of the equation. Yes, I do like Kelleher in this one, but the concern I do have on the Kelleher side is that reach disadvantage he has in the fight. But really, we got to see what Pilarte looks like on the scale tomorrow as well. So that's something to pay attention to there. Next up, we got a female matchup: Malecki taking on Nunez. Malecki 8,600, Nunez 7,600. This is another one. There's 3 fights on this fight card that have a notable reach advantage. We just talked about one. The other one previously was Jared Cannonier, who's got a 6-inch advantage, and Babe Malecki here, she has got a 7-inch reach advantage. This is, when you talk about that lower end of the UFC female division, this is that type of fight.
Yeah, 100%. Low level women's MMA in the UFC is, a very volatile matchup to target, but often one where you can find some good leverage. And I will say that for me, I know that Babe Malecki doesn't have the best record or the most experience, but I will target Babe Malecki because of the reach advantage, the height advantage. She's going to tower over Josiah Nunez in this matchup. And I would like to think that she's evolved somewhat from her previous performances. Obviously, her submission game and her grappling is just not really up to par for the rest of the division. But, her strong kickboxing and Muay Thai is good enough. And, she has decent skills within the clinch, more so going back on her footage, less of that shown in the UFC to this point. Josiah Nunes is a solid Brazilian kickboxer who, puts good combinations together, really aggressive, but lacks takedown defense in a ground game as well. So this is a fight that will probably play out on the feet. But I want the taller, rangier fighter if that's going to be the case. And Bay Malecki, 8,600. I think that she's going to get this done. I don't necessarily love the play, but I think that she's somewhat safe in regards to the rest of the card.
Yeah, I much prefer going to the Malecki route in terms of that one, but you do got to pay up, especially over on the FanDuel side of the equation, $19, 8,600 for Malecki over on DraftKings. Now, do want to let you know that we do have 2 new YouTube channels that you need to subscribe to if you love what we do for DFS, and you're going to love what we do for season-long fantasy football and sports betting. Just click the links pinned in the YouTube chat or in the description of the video to subscribe to those channels, and make sure to turn those notifications on as we are producing sports betting and fantasy football content around the clock. So make sure to stay up to date with videos with your favorite Awesemo hosts. If you want to check out some of the free content we are offering, you can find our fantasy football rankings in front of the paywall on the Awesemo.com fantasy football tab. And for sports betting, you can check out the Awesemo odds tab for access to Odd Shopper and our MLB betting tools, which include our sports betting model and player props tool. As you got to always check out there over at Odd Shopper, as you can price out where the best lines are at. And as I always say, when it comes to MMA betting, live betting is definitely the way to go with that one. Next up, we got a matchup of Pete. We got 2 Northeast guys going up against each other, William Knight and Fabio Cherant. Fabio Cherant, the underdog in this equation. He is 6,800 over on DraftKings, $10 on FanDuel. And for William Knight, 9,400 over on DraftKings, $22 over on FanDuel. I think, we always talk about, we always remember the last thing we saw. And the last time we saw Fabio Cherant, he got submitted by Alonzo Minifield. And so I think that's playing into the price here a little bit, but there has been some money coming in on Fabio Cherant.
Yeah, let me tell you that this price right now for both of these guys is ridiculous. I do think that William Knight probably has the more notoriety between the two and the more excitement. Like, a lot of fans are excited about him because of how dominant he has looked. And not dominant, but he's had to come from behind a lot. But when he wins, it's in a dominant fashion where it's like, okay, like, when he starts to impose his will, he's a scary guy because he, lifts people up, slams them, vicious ground and pound. I will say that his cardio is super suspect, though. Cardio is super suspect. And I think that's where, this recency bias with Fabio Cherant being at 6,800 is a little bit ridiculous. I think that, Fabio being now at Sanford MMA for this camp, for most of the camp, I think that he's surrounded by good bodies there where he can, work with a lot of people that could kind of emulate William Knight. I think if Fabio keeps this fight on the feet on the outside, I think that he picks William Knight apart and frustrates him, to be honest. I really do. If he goes in there and he tries to hunt another guillotine, like Alonzo Menifield did, he's going to get slammed and possibly controlled for numerous, minutes, of each round, which is dangerous. So, I think that William Knight's going to be a super chalky play, and people don't want to get to Fabio Cherant, but Fabio Cherant is my leverage play of the week. I think that I don't know if he's going to walk away with the victory, but I think that he is the best leverage play on the entire slate.
That makes me just kind of go over to our ownership and don't mind when I look at those fighters under 20%.
Right? I think William Knight should have been like 8,600. I think that would have made sense.
Yeah.
I think at 9,400, that's absolutely ridiculous. Yes, he's dangerous. Yes, he's probably the more likely of the two to get a finish. But Fabio does have good submission ability, and he's a southpaw, and he's a talented boxer. So I think that he'll have a better account of himself in this fight. I'm leaning Fabio Cherant in the matchup. But my recommendation would be maybe just be a little underweight to William Knight here. Maybe just be a little bit underweight.
Yeah, I don't think I want to get to a 9,400 William Knight too much.
Yeah.
But it's like I always say, when you have access, say you're also a plus member, when you look at those ownership, one of the things I ultimately always look at is those fighters underneath 20% and who can I potentially gain leverage on the field. And Fabio Cherant is definitely one of those guys you got to pay attention to there. Next up, we got Roberts taking on Bohandes, 8,400 for Roosevelt Robert. Ignacio is at 7,800. Roosevelt Roberts is a guy that I think that there was a time where everyone was super high on Roosevelt Roberts, and but this is one of those guys that I kind of feel like maybe this is a fight to potentially look at just because of the price point here.
100%. And I think that this is another, case of recency bias where, Roosevelt Roberts at 8,400 will probably be lost in the shuffle because he's disappointed people more often than not. I mean, you think about what happened against Kevin Kroom and then against Jim Miller and a couple fights prior to that against Vince Pichel. But I'll tell you that he is the more well-rounded mixed martial artist here. And you guys heard me, preface that I'm going to be, using that as like the needle mover for me when I'm having a difficult time in a matchup. And I think that if he can mix in some takedowns, his striking is not bad. Bahamondes does get hit a decent amount. He is a skyscraper for the division and has the better overall striking. But I think that Roosevelt Roberts, I'm going to lean in his way, honestly. I think that if he takes him down, he could possibly submit Bahamondes and show that he is the better overall fighter. But I don't hate the call on Bahamondes winning via decision. I don't expect a finish out of Bahamondes, but if he's going to win, it's probably going to be a high volume affair.
And then our opening fight of the night, we got Sasha taking on Ramiz. Sasha 7,700, Ramiz 8,500. And mention this question we got on Twitter here before the show from Hunter. He says, how sure are you and Pete that Ramiz can get the fight to the ground from 1 to 10? 10 is 100% positive.
I'll give him a 7, right? And I think that's like a cop-out answer, right? But I do think that, Ramiz is a strong guy and a very talented grappler, and he has a knack for taking people's backs. And if you think about what just happened to Sasha Palatnikov, he turned his back. And if you look at some of his fights, when he's forced to get up, back to his feet, he turns his back. It's a very, very bad habit. On the feet, Palatnikov has really shown that he can come from behind, withstand some adversity, and then start to pull away with a victory, especially if you fatigue. So if Ramiz Brahimaj does not implement takedowns or has suspect cardio, Palatnikov's going to pull off this upset. He really is. But for me, I think that Ramiz Brahimaj is surrounded by good talent at that camp. I think we might see a breakout performance here for him. So 8,500, I really like Brahimaj a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of thinking 6 to 7 in terms of my thoughts on him getting the fight to the ground. But look, if you think Sasha can stop the takedown, that's where when we talk about the FanDuel side of the equation, I think you got to kind of put him in there. Let's get to our straight up fight picks, and we'll get into some listener questions before we wrap it up for this edition of the Strategy Show. Let's start off right there at the bottom. First fight of the night. I will go Brahima. Yeah,
non-DFS related for all this. I'm going Brahimaj.
I will go Roosevelt Roberts. William Knight, Fabio Sharon. Like you, I think this fight's a lot closer than it says here. I will slide William Knight, but in terms of DFS, I do like Sharon as a good underdog play.
All right, I'm gonna side with my buddy. I'm gonna root for Fabio.
For me, it's Malecki over Nunez.
Malecki.
Give me Kelleher against Pilarte.
Kelleher.
I'll go Austin Lingo with a little bit of a minor upset there.
I don't blame you there, but I'm going Saldana.
Got to go Pantoja, even though, Royval's a guy that I've had a lot of great conversations with. So I do. My heart wants to say Royval, but I think I go with the brain here. Give me Pantoja.
Pantoja for me.
I will say Vince Pichel. Jones versus Saeed Yukab. Give me Trevin Jones.
Same. I cannot believe I'm saying that. I didn't think that he was going to win a fight in the UFC, but I'm going Trevin Jones.
Parker Porter, Chase Sherman.
Rooting Parker Porter, baby. Let's go, Parker.
I'm going to pick Chase Sherman, but man, don't feel good about it.
Yeah.
I like Marco Madsen against Clay Guida.
Agreed.
Then the main event. It's a close one for me. I'll go Kelvin Gastelum with the upset.
Let's go, Kelvin Gastelum. My mom's favorite fighter. I'm not even her favorite fighter. What a shame.
Mom not showing the love.
I guess not.
So David asked us one of our questions for the free UFC pool that DraftKings has on Cannonier Gastelum. So all about the main event. Who will win? Cannonier Gastelum. We just mentioned Gastelum's my straight up pick.
I like Gastelum.
Winning method. I will say this. If you're going to take Jared Cannonier to win, the winning method, I think to get yourself different, Jared Cannonier via decision.
Agreed.
I will go Kelvin Gastelum via decision.
I would agree with you. He's not knocking out Kelvin. I'm going to say Gastelum via decision.
Will there be a knockdown? Yes or no?
Yeah. I think so.
Will the fight go the distance? I say yes.
Yes.
Who will have more takedowns? Cannonier, tie/no takedowns occur, or Kevin Gastelum?
Come on. Dude, come on. Kelvin Gastelum's going to have more takedowns.
He should, but we've seen Kelvin Gastelum in the past just forget that he can't take people down.
And we've also seen Whitaker take him down too. So
yeah. Who will land more significant strikes?
Gastelum.
Will there be a submission attempt? I say no.
How the hell are they going to judge that? I mean, I guess. I mean,
which round will the fight end? I would say you just go with decision.
Yeah. Man.
Also want to hit a super chat we got earlier. Samuel with his usuals, top 2 cash, GPP, underdogs, MVP, favorite inside the distance fight, top 2 leverage plays, upset the night, over under KO. Love the work, fellas. So let's talk about top 2 cash and top 2 GPP.
All right. I'll go. My first for cash is Marco Madsen. And then I will say Brian Kelleher. I think that those two are 2 solid cash options.
In terms of underdogs, I think to potentially look at here, Fabio Sharon, I think is one to potentially look at. Austin Lingo to me would be another one that I would look at. MVP and champions. MVP. That's an interesting one. Madsen, I think would be definitely someone I would look at. Bay Malecki, even though it's a low level fight, maybe another one to potentially look at.
Bay Malecki.
I know.
Man. Yeah. I mean, I really like Kelleher this week, and I just hope he has a good weight cut. I will say that Marco Madsen is a cop-out answer, but I like him a lot.
Favorite inside the distance fights?
It's a good one.
Would Knight Charant be up there? Just because I don't know if in terms of 15 minutes.
I don't know. I think the first fight of the night might be the most like volatile matchup. You know what I mean? Like it's tough to say who's going to get a finish. It might be the Jones Saeed, honestly.
All right. So now we got to get to our over under number on finishes.
Let me just point out, because if you've listened to last week's show or whatever our last show was, Jason got smoked on that line, and I tried to tell him, and everybody in the chat tried to tell him it was a bad line. Our boy Tyler's even saying it's a bad line. Let's hear it this week, buddy.
5.5.
How many
12 fights?
12.
So I'm going right down the middle.
I'm going to say more.
I can see that. There's some fights I think, could see going decision, but also I can see a finish. But yeah. The last fight card, that was not good. That was a bad line, Jason. Bad line. Upset of the night. That'll be the last one there from Samuel.
Upset of the night. Rooting for my hometown boy. Not hometown, but around the area. I'm going to say Fabio Sharon.
Samuel says, what does Pete think about pairing Sharon and Porter in the same lineup?
I think that pairing that is going to be extremely contrarian, but also volatile. Like, you have to minimize risk for a portion of your lineup. So say if you have a 20 max, I think that you should put out like 7 lineups that are relatively safe. And then the final 13, you can start to work that differentiation and volatility. But it's all dependent on your risk.
Of course, appreciate everyone here on a Thursday afternoon. If, of course, you're not subscribed, also right here on YouTube, you got to do that. Hit that thumbs up button, as we have a ton of great programming for you. Got 2 shows coming up here later on today, and 30 minutes from now, you got MLB Deeper Dive with Eric and Adam. Then we got the NFL preseason live before lock, Lawfully and Matt, to get you ready for tonight's preseason action, the start of week number 2. So appreciate everyone tuning in here on a Thursday. I will not be on Saturday. Greg will be filling in for me, as Pete will be doing the show there with Greg. So be sure to check those guys out on Saturday for live before lock. I will be in Slack earlier on in the day on Saturday. If you do have any questions for me, I'll be in there for a little bit, but do want to thank everyone for checking us out here on a Thursday. As always, be sure to follow us on Twitter, whether at myself, I'm at Jason_Floyd, he's at Pete Pete the Heat MMA. Be sure to follow Awesemo on Twitter at Awesemo_com. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Awesemo MMA Strategy Show. I will see you next week for the Strategy Show, but you can check Pete out on Saturday for Live Before Lock. Good afternoon, everybody.